Hi, I'm Meg Rosenburg, and I'm the Tolman Bacher House Curator for the Keck Institute for Space Studies. This house was completed in 1926 by Richard C. Tolman, who was a professor at Caltech. And in the 1920s, this was a shady residential street. As you can see now, campus has expanded, and this house has witnessed all of those changes over the years. The Tolmans lived in the house until 1957, and then the Bachers, Robert and Jean, moved in. And since that time, it's belonged to Caltech and is now a part of the Keck Institute. So when I first heard about this project, it was very exciting because I've always wondered what was in this house. I've been on campus for several years and I never knew. So I always think maybe other people are wondering too. And it's interesting to look back through the history of when it was a residence and then when it was offices, and kind of to move through all of the stages of its existence here on campus and off campus. I'm standing now in the oldest part of the house, which was completed in 1926. And this is the house that Richard C. Tolman commissioned when he arrived at Caltech to take up his faculty appointment in 1922. So he met Ruth Sherman a couple years later, and they got married in 1924 and moved into this house. And this is the living room, and you can kind of get a sense as soon as you step in the door of that Spanish Revival, rustic simplicity that Tolman was going for when he commissioned this house in the first place. This was the center of life for the Tolmans. It was a place for these vibrant social gatherings, dinner parties, and also for quiet conversations or reading by the fireplace, and for intellectual conversations as well. And they always had a little dog who was sprawled out in front of the fireplace. So Richard C. Tolman lived here until he passed away in 1948, and then after that his wife Ruth Tolman, who was herself a distinguished psychologist, lived here until 1957. When she passed away, the house passed to the Bachers, Robert and Jean, and the reason that that happened is because the Tolmans and Bachers had become very good friends. Partly that goes back all the way to the Second World War, when Richard Tolman and Robert Bacher worked together very closely on the Manhattan Project, and then later on the Atomic Energy Commission. But also, once Robert Bacher agreed to come to Caltech, he became the chairman of the Division of Physics, Mathematics, and Astronomy in 1949. He and his wife Jean arrived here, and they didn't have a place to live, and they actually stayed in this house with Ruth Tolman until they could find a house to rent. And that was the start of a very close friendship between Ruth Tolman and the Bachers. So when she passed away in 1957, the Bachers moved in here, and they lived here very happily until 1988, and that's when Caltech purchased the property. And you can tell from then until now, 345 South Michigan, which was once this very quiet, residential, shady, peaceful street, is now right in the middle of this expanding campus, the northern part of Caltech. So that's a lot for one little house to witness. We've been putting together these displays for the bookshelves in this room and also for the study at the other end of the house. And the goal with this project has been to select different items from the lives of the Tolmans, of the Bachers, and also the surroundings at Caltech to give visitors a sense of what it would have been like to live in this house, to work at Caltech, what it would have been like to be here at different points of time in the house's history. So the challenge with that is that how do you capture all of those eras that this house has witnessed, all the way from the 1920s till today? So what we hope is that by putting together these displays of notes and letters and pictures and newspaper clippings, visitors and also people here for the Keck Institute for Space Studies get a sense of walking into Caltech's history and experiencing it in a very visceral way. So this was the study that Tolman had built in 1936, which was 10 years after the original house. And the architect Gordon B. Kaufman had just finished the Athenaeum and the South Undergrad houses when Tolman commissioned him to build this addition. And this is now the Black Hole Conference Room for KISS. So there's actually a funny story about this study. When Tolman decided that he wanted to build this addition, there wasn't enough room in his original plot of land for something of this size. But that didn't stop him. So what he did was he waited for his next door neighbor, who was another Caltech professor, Paul S. Epstein, to move. And he purchased Epstein's house and his property and the land next to that. And he picked up the house and had it moved 50 feet to the south to make room for this study. And I've heard it called affectionately Tolman's folly, because he went to such great lengths to have the study built. So when I first arrived on campus as a new graduate student, I looked around and I guess I had the impression, or I just didn't really think about it very much, that the buildings on campus were as they are and they hadn't changed over time very much. But now that I've been delving into the lives of the people that lived in this house and how the campus has changed around it over time, I've really come to this sense of how much has changed since the house was built, since Caltech moved to this spot in Pasadena, and I see it everywhere now. Everywhere I go on campus, I have these questions now about what was here before, or when did this change, or when was that building put up. So it's kind of a funny thing, a consequence of having worked on this project that now has affected my daily life, but I think it's really fun. So one of the aspects of this project that I really enjoy, and really all historical work, is going to the archives. So what that means is that when a Caltech professor, for example, donates his papers to the archives, they get cataloged, their little descriptions get written up of them, and they're all put in folders and boxes and organized. And as a researcher, you can visit those records and look through them and sort of get a sense for what kinds of things did they save, or what were they thinking at the time, or what was it like to live where they lived and to do the kinds of things that they would have done, like the job at Caltech, what would have that been like? So you kind of get a little peek inside their lives, and it's never going to be complete because you only have little bits and scraps of things, but that's kind of part of the fascinating aspect of it, because it's like an endless little mystery about what you can figure out and what you can learn from the kinds of things that are left behind. And it's kind of made me think in my own life, what kinds of things am I going to save? Because maybe someday in the future, some historian will actually care and be looking through my things. And I just wonder what they'll have learned from the kinds of things that I might save. So here we are in the backyard of the Tolman Bacher house, and this space has undergone quite a few changes over the years that it's been occupied. So when the house was first built, this was a little cozy garden area. There were gardens over here and a little retaining wall on that side, and over here was a garage which had been converted into a guest house. And Robert Oppenheimer used to spend his spring quarters here at Caltech teaching, and he would stay in this guest house with his good friends, the Tolmans. Later on, when the house passed to the Bachers, they installed a swimming pool in this area, and they had to get special permission, a guarantee from Caltech's president that the new construction on campus wouldn't encroach on the swimming pool grounds or on any of his property. So when the house passed to Caltech in 1988, they took out the swimming pool, and it was used for a while as a reception area, and now it's part of the beautiful new Keck Center on campus for the headquarters of the Keck Institute for Space Studies. So now, as part of the Keck Institute for Space Studies, the Tolman Bacher House has a chance to be part of this future endeavor to move forward space science and technology. And its original owners, Tolman and Bacher, would be pleased to know this, I think, because they spent their entire lives working towards the advancement of science, and now it's continuing on into the future.